You know what the saddest thing about hating yourself is? It is not just the hate, it is that you still want to be loved. Even while you carry that quiet criticism inside you, you still long for connection. You want to feel accepted. You want to feel chosen. You want to feel understood without having to explain yourself. And there is something heavy about that contrast. You push yourself away in your own thoughts, but you hope someone else will pull you closer. That tension lives in you. It does not disappear just because you notice it. You may not always realize how much comparison feeds that feeling. You look at someone else, you notice what they have, you notice what you do not have, and in that moment, something shifts. You begin to measure yourself against them. Without meaning to, you treat their strengths as standards. You turn their life into a mirror, and in that mirror, you only see what seems missing. You forget that difference is not deficiency. You forget that the thing they have and you do not is not proof of failure, it is simply difference. You also forget something else. If they have something you do not, then you have something they do not. That truth does not always feel obvious. You are trained to see gaps, not balances. You focus on what feels absent in you. You rarely pause to consider what exists in you that cannot be copied. The very thing you criticize yourself for may also be the very thing that makes you unique. And yet, instead of protecting that uniqueness, you turn it into evidence against yourself. Self-hatred does not usually begin in one dramatic moment. It grows slowly. It builds through repetition. You compare once, you judge yourself, you repeat it again. Over time, it becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar starts to feel true. It does not feel like a choice anymore. It feels like a fact. You may not even remember when it started. It just feels like the way you see yourself. That is why it is not easy to suddenly stop. You cannot simply decide one day to reverse something that has been practiced for years. Self-hatred becomes a habit. It shapes your thoughts. It influences how you interpret events. It becomes a strong internal pattern. And when a pattern is reinforced long enough, it feels automatic. It does not ask for permission. It simply appears. You might think that if you try hard enough, you can override it immediately, but it is not that simple. You cannot argue with a belief you are completely convinced of. If you have decided, deep inside, that you are not worth loving, then every experience filters through that belief. Compliments feel temporary. Success feels incomplete. Progress feels insufficient. You interpret everything through the same lens, and that lens is not neutral. It can feel frustrating to realize how deeply you believe your own criticism. It does not feel like a debate. It feels settled. And when something feels settled, you do not question it easily. Your ego holds onto it. It insists that the judgment is justified. It tells you that being hard on yourself is responsible. It tells you that this is how you stay realistic. So even when you want to change, another part of you resists. This resistance can make you feel stuck. You may want to love yourself, but the internal voice feels louder. It repeats the same conclusions. It reinforces the same conclusions. And because it has repeated them so often, it feels reliable. It feels like truth. That is why self-hatred can feel so persistent. It is not just emotion. It is a conviction that has been practiced. Still, you carry love inside you. You show it to other people without hesitation. You care about them. You support them. You understand their mistakes. You encourage their growth. You feel compassion when they struggle. That capacity is real. It is not something you lack. It already lives in you. You do not have to invent it. You only have to notice that it exists. And if you can love others, that means the ability to love is present within you. It is not absent. The same heart that extends patience outward can extend it inward. The same empathy you offer to someone else can be directed toward yourself. But turning it inward feels unfamiliar. It may even feel uncomfortable. You are not used to treating yourself with the same softness you offer others. You may have learned self-criticism as a form of discipline. You may believe that being strict with yourself keeps you motivated. But over time, strictness can turn into resentment. And resentment, repeated often enough, can turn into identity. When that happens, you begin to believe that being harsh with yourself is just who you are. It does not feel optional anymore. It feels necessary. You cannot expect to undo that overnight. If self-hatred developed as a habit, then self-love must also develop as a habit. Habits require repetition. They require patience. They require awareness. It is not realistic to assume that something built slowly can disappear instantly. Understanding that does not solve everything, but it does remove some of the pressure. It helps you see that progress can be gradual. When you look at other people, you might feel a reaction of comparison, but you can choose how you interpret it. Instead of seeing them as proof that you are behind, you can see them as proof that possibility exists. If someone achieves something, it shows that achievement is real. It shows that growth is real. It does not remove your own path. It simply confirms that outcomes are not fixed. You are not running the same race as everyone else. Your path is not identical to theirs. Your timing is not identical to theirs. When you compare yourself, you are often comparing situations that are not equal. That comparison creates pressure that does not belong to you. You may feel like you are competing, competing, but you are not actually on the same track. The only consistent comparison that matters is the one between who you are now and who you were before. When you look at others, you can let their progress remind you that change is possible. Their success does not threaten you. It can represent hope. Hope that effort can lead somewhere. Hope that growth is available. Hope that your life is not limited to your current state. Seeing it this way does not mean you ignore your feelings. It just means you do not turn someone else's journey into evidence against your own worth. If you can admire something in another person, pause and notice that admiration. The qualities you respect in them are qualities you recognize. Recognition suggests familiarity, and familiarity suggests that those qualities are not foreign to you. They are part of the broader human capacity you share. The fact that you can see goodness in others means you understand goodness. That understanding does not exist outside of you. You may still struggle with how you see yourself. That struggle does not mean you are failing. It simply means the pattern is strong. Self-hatred does not dissolve because you decide it should. It weakens gradually through repeated moments of awareness. Each time you notice comparison without turning it into judgment, you create a small shift. Each time you question the automatic criticism, you loosen its hold slightly. You do not need to rush. You do not need to force yourself into sudden positivity. That would not feel honest. Instead, you can acknowledge that the habit exists. You can acknowledge that it took time to build, and you can allow time for something different to form. The process may feel slow. It may feel incomplete, but it is still movement. You still want to be loved. That desire has not disappeared. It is part of you. And perhaps that desire is not something to reject. It may simply remind you that connection matters to you. It reminds you that you value belonging. It reminds you that your heart is open even when your thoughts are critical. Over time, you may begin to see that the love you seek from others is not something you are entirely missing internally. It already lives within you, expressed outwardly every time you care about someone else. The challenge is not creating love from nothing. The challenge is allowing it to flow in both directions. That shift does not happen instantly. It unfolds slowly as you question old beliefs and notice new possibilities. For now, you are learning to see comparison differently. You are learning to recognize habit instead of truth. You are learning that uniqueness is not a flaw. You are learning that conviction can change. And in that learning, you are not required to become someone else. You are simply beginning to see yourself with slightly more honesty. And in that quiet space of awareness, you realize something simple. The voice that convinced you to hate yourself was learned, not permanent.